All right, if you clicked on this video, then you're probably interested in answering the question, do you need a powerlifting coach? And let's answer it. Firstly, I want to give a bit of a disclaimer. I am a coach. I make my living coaching. I have for many years. I manage a team of coaches, and we sell subscriptions to a coaching app. Despite that, I'm going to try to do my best to remain unbiased to the best of my abilities, while still relying on my experience and, in some cases, abilities and knowledge as a coach to better inform you in your decision making. Now let's get to the meat of it and answer the question, do you need a coach? No. That's it. You can click off the video if that's all you wanted. But, of course, you could always ask the question, should I get a powerlifting coach, or should you get a powerlifting coach? And that starts to open some interesting discussions. First, let's talk a little bit about who should get a coach and what some of the benefits of having a coach are. There are a few questions that I would start with to investigate whether or not you should get a coach. Firstly, do you want a coach? If you have an interest in getting a coach, if you think or feel, have some sort of intuition that getting a coach would be a good and productive thing for you and allow you to dedicate some of your other resources that you're currently using, programming, planning, and worrying about modifying your own training, put those elsewhere, right? And perhaps spend more time recovering and focus on the intent put into your sessions, then that's probably a good indication that, yeah, you might be somebody who's a good candidate to get a coach. The next question to ask is, what are your goals in the sport? Are you somebody who's looking to compete and be competitive? If so, a coach is likely a good idea to ensure that you have that extra experience and expediency in getting to those goals and competing and being competitive. You can always try out something that has a little bit lower barrier to entry, at least financially, like the Calgary Barbell app. I'm going to plug it here and then we'll leave that alone. Again, I don't want this video to come off as an ad for our services, but it's there, link in the description if you want to check it out. A lot of powerlifting programming is trial and error, and an experienced coach is going to help you try the right things and realize what are errors a lot quicker than you would likely do on your own. The last question you want to ask yourself is, can you afford it? Do you have the additional resources to commit to paying for a coach? You know, I'm a fan of the adage that, like tattoos, good coaches aren't cheap and cheap coaches aren't good, at least generally speaking. So if the idea of getting a coach sounds like something you're interested in, if you have big goals and would like to accomplish lots and accelerate your road to accomplishing those things, and you have the finances to do so, you're probably a good candidate for a coach. So what can you expect and what are the benefits of having a coach? Like I said, one of the main benefits of hiring a coach is obviously making more progress, right? You're gonna put kilos on your total, gain muscle, lose fat, whatever your goals are, coaches are there to speed you along your way. Coaches also offer, to varying degrees, accountability and motivation. Some coaches are not the cheerleader type, but that's something that we can talk about a little bit later in terms of trying to find the right coach for you. Another thing that I think is really important in a good coaching relationship is it allows you peace of mind. A good coaching relationship is going to be centered around trust, and your trust that the coach is implementing the correct and optimal strategies to give you the results that you're after, thereby giving you peace of mind to trust that you're doing the right thing at the right time. And I think to some extent, even just that buy-in of feeling like whatever I'm doing, it's the right thing. I expect to make progress because I trust my coach and I know that they've intelligently put these things in front of me for a reason. Having a coach is also a useful sounding board. Whether or not you are somebody who wants to be involved in the coaching process and has input and questions about the programming and the philosophy underpinning the programming, having a coach gives you somebody to turn to when things aren't going correctly. If we're not making the progress that we desire, a good coach is going to have a way to iterate and adapt, making changes to things so that you can course correct, or they'll be able to, assuage your concerns and say, that's all right. In these metrics, which are what we're focusing on right now, we are making progress. Allow you to see the bigger picture when it comes to the overall plan for your training. Now, with all that being said, for the sake of balanced discussion, let's play devil's advocate a little bit and talk about those who maybe shouldn't get a coach or who might not benefit so much from that coaching relationship. If you are someone who really struggles with sort of handing over the reins to your training, if you're someone who enjoys and benefits from the freedom to be able to go in and change stuff on the fly, sometimes not even doing the programming that you've written for yourself, but rather adapting things wholesale based on whatever metrics you might have for making those changes. If that method of doing things is something that you enjoy and something that is productive for you, then I see no reason to change that system. Now, there are certainly some instances where if you're program hopping or changing everything as soon as you get into the gym and not sticking to your plan, maybe that's a strong indication that you should have a coach, but there are those who enjoy that and benefit from that, and for those people, I would say you're probably okay doing your own thing until it doesn't work anymore. Secondly, if you're not that serious, and that might sound like some sort of backhanded diss to somebody who doesn't spend all of their time obsessing about lifting heavy circles, but I promise you, it's not. Some people just don't aspire to international or national competitive success. For some people, it is enough to enjoy things. Sometimes I'm jealous of those people. For some people, it's enough to just enjoy lifting. It's a social experience. They're happy, running something like the 16-week program that we have for free on our website at calgarybarbell.com over and over and over again, and making some progress, not really worried if they're breaking a record or whatever. They just want to do the thing, to have a good time, to socialize, for the health benefits of it, and I think that's something that I respect a great deal. I don't think there's any reason that people should, poo-poo all over those who do something casually because they want to enjoy it. I'm a firm believer that people should enjoy things however they enjoy them, however they fit into their lives. And if powerlifting is something that fits into your life casually, maybe you don't need a coach. Maybe you're good doing what you're doing, piecing together programs and just having a good time. And lastly, if you're somebody who enjoys and benefits from self-coaching, if you are the analytical type and you want to develop your training philosophy by experimenting on yourself, there are certainly many high-level coaches who presumably have learned a lot of what they've learned from self-coaching, my coach included. There are a great many coaches who also have coaches, because I think there's like I said, a very big benefit in having a sounding board and being able to discuss these ideas. But at the same time, there are certainly those who, trying those things out on themselves, allow them to, make more modifications and understand the reasoning behind the decision making and further flesh out their own training and programming philosophy. And for those people, I think, again, do you. If it's beneficial in that you're making gains and progress and you're happy with that progress and you're enjoying the process and learning maybe from a professional development aspect, by all means, do you. Now let's say for discussion's sake, you're interested in finding a coach. How do you find a good one? The first thing I'd look for when vetting a coach is, who do they coach? And I don't think it's as narrow as, what accomplishments or accolades have their lifters attained, but rather what sorts of personality types do they seem to mesh well with? What are the outlooks of their competitors? As well as obviously, how well do their lifters do? But I think there's maybe more to be gleaned from the personality types that mesh adequately or exceptionally with a certain coach. I think that tells you a lot about whether or not you might be a good fit for a coach based on those lifters. I'd also try to do some research into the coach's methods for programming, for communication, and I think if you're somebody who has a really strong opinion about a school or system of coaching and progression or rating intensity or whatever it is, you want to look ahead of time to know that this coach is going to have some of the same base beliefs that align with you, so that you can, get past some of the initial maybe hiccups you might suffer from otherwise. And when it comes to the communication, if you're somebody who wants a little more of a guiding hand, do they do weekly check-ins? Do they allow communication outside of that weekly check-ins? What's their response time like? How do they prefer their communication? If those systems don't align, it's going to make it really hard to have a successful coaching relationship with a person. And again, and very importantly, I would look at the cost. Many coaches have different tiers or packages. Perhaps if you purchase a longer period or commit to a longer period, the rate per month goes down. I don't know, just as an example. I think another important thing in this sort of cost assessment is going to be being able to commit to probably 10 or 12 weeks to actually try a coach out. It can be easy in some instances to bounce off of a coaching relationship if those first few weeks aren't great. And I think in a lot of cases, the initial period with a new coach is best spent learning, gathering information, and sometimes that very first program that a coach writes doesn't work for a lifter. A great many times it does, and lifters enjoy a whole bunch of success right away with a new coach. But there are certainly instances where that initial period is kind of a turbulent one. Maybe there's some aches and pains and twinges that come up from needing to adjust volume levels and exercise tolerance and all that kind of stuff. So I think if you make the decision to invest into a coach, spend some time with that coach, give them the benefit of the doubt, and go through the process in a committed fashion. You want to make sure that you're bought in, and that's the only way you're going to really know whether or not that coaching relationship was for you. So what I'm saying is budget for a decent little bit of time if you're going to start with a new coach to make your assessment. That being said, there are certainly some things to watch out for with a new coach, some red flags, if you will. Maybe I am a little biased as a coach myself, but the biggest red flag I think for any coach is poaching. If a coach approaches you, especially if you're already coached by somebody else, and says, you'd be better if you were with me, I could take you further, and then offers you some kind of deal or tries to otherwise lure you away from your current coach, I think that's such sleazy behavior. And I think 9 out of 10 times, that indicates that that coach would rather spend their time and resources trying to lure a high-profile lifter or somebody they see as having potential onto their roster than spend the time developing their own stable of athletes. And I just don't think that's a good look, and I don't think that's a good sign that points towards a good coach. As part of this process, I would also reach out to some lifters that have been coached by the coach before, or lifters who are currently being coached. I would probably try to get a sample of both. You may run into some instances where there's a bit of bad blood, and people's relationships of all types generally, there's going to be some that don't work out and that there's some harsh feelings there. But if you run into 6 different lifters who have had a really bad experience and all those experiences sound pretty similar, that might be a thing. Now let's say you get started with a coach. What should you expect? What are the green flags of coaching? So once you've begun with a coach, you should expect the following things. Number 1, getting your programming on time. This is the absolute lowest bar to set. This is showing up for work as a powerlifting coach. I'm human. There have been instances where programming has been late, but if this is a chronic thing, or if it doesn't show up for multiple days or a week, that is problematic. At a base, with any coach, you should get your programming. I'm always blown away by the number of lifters in their intake call who mentioned a previous coach had trouble getting them their programming on time. That should not be a thing. Number 2, responsiveness. I think a lot of people see coaching as programming, but programming is programming, and coaching is communication. It is education. It is listening. It is being able to reflect on other people's perspectives, being able to collaborate, and being able to contextualize sometimes subtle hints in communication in order to do a better job for people. So, again, you should expect some level of communication and responsiveness. This is going to vary coach to coach and sometimes coaching option to coaching option, but make sure that this is laid out clearly ahead of time so you know what you're getting into, so that both sides know what the expectations of this business engagement and coaching relationship are. Number 3, a why. I think most decisions that I make when it comes to programming or coaching have a sound rationale for why I did that versus something else. If it's the first week of programming and I don't really have a whole lot to go off of in terms of this lifter's background in training, their previous programs and that kind of stuff, sometimes my why is because this worked with another athlete. Sometimes the why is, I don't know, I wanted to give you some bicep work because I thought that might be fun. But also sometimes the why is we're working on X very specific pattern, or we saw a correlation with this movement and increases in your squat E1RM in a past block. But ask those questions and get that feedback, because I think, again, I've mentioned this concept of buy-in a few times. But if you're expecting the programming to work and you're believing the programming is going to work, placebo's a hell of a drug. Even if it isn't the most optimal training program for you, you buying into it and believing it's going to work give you much greater odds of success in that program. And number 4, meaningful feedback. Not just feedback, but meaningful feedback. This one can be a little bit tricky because I think sometimes, if I get a new lifter who comes to me and their squat is excellent, it's progressing, it's comfortable, it's repeatable, their technique is like I said, consistent, I'm not gonna change it. I think in some instances, it may be sort of a fear on the coach's part that if they don't offer feedback, or maybe a perception of the clients that if they don't get feedback other than looks good, that they're not getting value. But in some cases, withholding that feedback and just saying, hey, you're doing a great job, keep doing this, is the feedback that people need. Now, on the flip side, if that's the only feedback you get is that, hey, this looks good, let's go up 5 pounds, but the video you sent them was you missing a lift, well, I think at that point you should be getting more feedback than that. So there's a sweet spot in between, right? Where you're gonna get responses and feedback on things that are relevant and things that are helpful, but not necessarily just changing things for changing things' sake. So if you feel like the feedback you're getting is meaningful and actionable, and it's being given in a way where you have the freedom to have some say in it, I think that's a really important thing. And number 5, my last point here, is collaboration. I think that any coaching relationship should be a two-way street. I don't have a single lifter that I just tell them what they're gonna do and that's it. Most things should be a conversation. Most things should involve feedback and potentially retooling strategies or selecting different exercises. I think that lifters having agency in their programming is really important, because again, this all feeds back, if you haven't noticed by now, this all feeds back into the buy-in concept. This all feeds back into believing in your training and thinking and knowing that it's gonna work. And if your coach took that idea you had to try pin squats this block and your squat blows up, I mean, you're both happy at that point. Your coach shouldn't be fragile enough that you having a good idea is threatening somehow to them. A collaborative effort is always going to be preferable. There are points where, a coach, if they have a good reason to say no, they should say no. They should also be able to put their foot down in some instances. But if they don't have a good reason to say no, they should probably be open to at least talking to you and being reasonable with your feedback in your training. So long story short, or long, I guess, No, you don't need a coach. You don't. Should you want one? I think they're pretty darn valuable. If you want one, I think it's a good investment. I think that you're gonna get more out of your training if you have a coach. I think you're gonna learn more about why you do the things that you do if you have a coach. I think you're gonna be able to understand and buy into your training potentially more if you have a coach, which will lead to making more progress, seeing more results, an accelerated time frame for achieving results. It's good things. And if you're interested in any of the coaching services that we offer, whether it's powerlifting performance coaching, nutrition coaching, or training coaching through our Calgary Barbell training app, they're all there too. You can check those out in the description link below or just at calgarybarbell.com. Hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I armed you with some knowledge to, if you do decide to get a coach, to find a good one, and we'll see you in the next video.